All right, here we are with Randall Lyons of the Massachusetts Marine Trades Association. Randall, we're going to talk today about something that was certainly worth getting to, right?
Yes, sir.
You folks put a lot of time into it, as did the state. It is the Hanson Milone Safe Boating Act.
Yes,
and it's
sir.
high time, right?
It is high time. It's been a long time coming for sure. So happy to chat with you a little bit about it. And
Talk about who it's named after.
Yeah, absolutely. So originally the bill came about just over 12 years ago, and it was named after a gentleman by the name of David Hanson, who unfortunately passed away in a boating accident. David was from Kingston, Massachusetts. He was a call firefighter for Kingston, and
Good man, dedicated man.
He was definitely, and from there, the bill was kind of enacted through the work of his family to try to push something forward to come up with a safe boating bill. So it was called at the time the David Hanson Act. 11, 12 years later of kind of ongoing back and forth and tweaks to the bill and no passage. This year, I kind of pushed forward an idea to add Paul Milone to the bill. Paul Milone was the former Weymouth Harbor Master. He worked in that role for 30 plus years, had a very, very strong reputation, and was also a huge proponent for boater safety. He taught boater safety and was just always a very, very strong advocate for almost his entire career. So knowing his reputation and just knowing, I actually knew Paul personally, and knowing some of his family members, I reached out to both families and I said, hey, here's an idea. How about we look to come up with a change to the bill to call it the Hanson Milone Act. I, in turn, reached out to Rep. Lenatra, who has been a huge proponent and huge supporter of the bill right out of the Kingston district. Mentioned the idea to her, and she was all for it, and knew Paul as well. So the bill became the Hanson Milone Act, and it was kind of a good thing for sure, just because a lot of the state officials also knew Paul and knew his background, and again, he had a very strong reputation as well.
Yeah, certainly a great honor for them both.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be on this bill that will help and save lives.
Exactly.
Help so many, right?
Yeah, for sure. And the night it was passed, or the day that the governor signed it, there was kind of a ceremony at the New England Boat Show. The lieutenant governor was speaking at the show anyways, but it just happened to be the same day that the governor signed the bill. So both families were actually there, and you could just see how happy they were, especially the Hanson family, just going through this for 12 plus years.
Right.
Long time coming. So,
and you would think this kind of a bill would just be sort of a no-brainer.
You would think, for
right?
sure.
But a lot to work through.
It was, definitely. There was a lot of adjustments and a lot of tweaks, and I think the average bill in Massachusetts takes 7 years to pass. Yeah. So it's just a very interesting process. The Mass Marine Trades is represented by a firm called Buchanan and Associates. The attorney, Jamie, who's the owner of that firm, has been involved right from the beginning, and she definitely was very much involved in the language and the changes and the tweaks and working with state officials, working with Rep. Lenatra's office, working with different groups and organizations that were involved for sure. And I think that was kind of part of it. And just this was the year. I mean, it was just a big push in 2024 and getting more support from the state officials, more sponsors, and finally getting it over the finish line pretty much right at the last minute.
So let's unpack the bill. Nobody knows this bill better than Randall Lyons.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
I don't know about that. I hope the state knows it.
I've talked to you in the past about it, and you've got it all down. We want to take it slowly and a step at a time so folks understand and realize what they need to do and if they're eligible and the play. So take us through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, the first thing is kind of an overview. So there's now going to be a requirement in the state of Massachusetts that every boater with some exemptions is required to get a boater certificate. Massachusetts was one of the only states in the country that did not have this bill in place. So we're kind of playing a little catch up here, including being the only state in New England. So now that the bill is passed, there's a little timeline to adjust to the bill, get the information out there to make sure boaters are aware. The first stage of the bill will kick in next year on April 1st, 2026, and that is a requirement for anybody born after. Let me make sure I get this correct here.
It's all going to be, we're going to have links to everything and all the information. Absolutely. But let's see if you have it down.
So anybody born after January 1st, 1989. So ultimately the younger boaters will start off having the requirement phase in. So they are going to be required to get that bill.
April 2026.
Correct.
Okay.
From there, enforcement from the state is actually not going to start until September 1st, 2026. So I think the way I look at it, that's kind of the grace period. That's where they're going to be out there letting people know, hey, this is the requirement. This is where you're going to have to make sure you get it.
They're going to ease into that.
Absolutely.
There aren't going to be, Hanson Milone Safety Act checkpoints on your local,
exactly.
river or ocean.
Yeah.
They're going to ease into that.
Yeah. And that's where kind of this phase in process. So
Right.
Step 2 is anybody born before January 1st, 1989 has another 2 years. So they have until April 1st, 2028.
Okay.
So when you look at age and the average boater, I think that's where the majority of boaters will fall in. Not everybody, but that's where the majority of boaters. So they still have a good 3.5 years to come into compliance, to take the tests,
Absolutely.
to get their certificate, and to have that in place. Right now, before October 1st, the state is looking at kind of the guidelines and the guidance that they're going to put forward with the bill. So we've been involved in kind of reading through the bill. There were a few last minute changes that we weren't prepared for. So now reaching out to our members, working with some of the businesses just to make sure that we try to at least get our kind of opinions and thoughts in there before the official guidance comes out. And hopefully the state recognizes that. And so far they've been willing to listen to us and hopefully work with us on that front.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about, right? I know at the Business of Boating conference this year, there was discussion and rentals were brought up.
Rentals
For example,
is definitely
folks
a
come
big
in
one.
from out of state, many do to Massachusetts.
Yeah.
They rent a boat. Do they need the certification?
Yeah, they do, with the exception of reciprocity. So that's one very good thing as far as I'm concerned in the bill. There is reciprocity for the other 49 states, provided those boaters have a state and NASBA approved license. So that's one good thing, and not one good thing, but that's part of the bill that does allow for that rental concern. However, rental businesses still are very concerned with this bill, and those that may not have that license already in place. So one of the things that we push back on and that we've requested from the state is to try to come up with a temporary rental license, which New Hampshire does, Maine does. So there are other states that do that same thing. By offering a temporary license, it's also a much shorter test, and the business is able to provide that right on the spot.
Yeah, when I rented a jet ski in Key West, they
sure.
said, well, you have to take this quick. And it was comprehensive.
Yeah,
it was a nice
absolutely.
little quiz. You took a little time with it just to make sure that you understand.
Sure. And it allows the rental business. I mean, first and foremost, I'm sure they're going to get the information out there to their clients. But when you look at rentals, I mean, a lot of people do that last minute. So to have that other option to take a 15 to 30-minute test right before they rent the boat, I mean, I think that makes sense one way or the other. So that's what we've asked now. I think the state is reviewing that. I think they recognize the demand and the need for those businesses in this state, and kind of being a stepping stone towards boat ownership is our rental businesses. So we're hoping that becomes part of the guidance.
Let's talk about the test.
Yes, sir.
Right? Do I have to study for this?
There's a couple different options, first of all, and that was one of the other big pushes that we made, especially post-COVID, was to have the opportunity to take it online. And that also improves the access across the state. So it enables anybody to take it at any point. There's one approved online course right now. Actually, there's two, but it's the same company. So there's a regular online, which is Boat-Ed, and then you just search for Massachusetts. And then they created another option, kind of a more of a interactive virtual tests to kind of learn and play while you go along. I feel like that was kind of geared towards a younger generation that might have a better opportunity to take the test that way. So those are the two options online. It kind of guides you through the test. You go step by step. They recommend 8 to 10 hours online. I took this test a couple of years ago, and it took me roughly 3 to 3.5 hours. So I'm not an avid boater.
So it does take a little time.
It does take a little time for sure. And you don't have to do it all at once. You could start it. I think you have don't quote me on this, but I think it's 30 or 90 days once you start it to finish it. So you can start and come back to it as well. So that's the online avenue. And then the traditional avenue, which is the in-person, still exists. So having those U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, Power Squadron.
Wonderful group.
Absolutely. One of our members, Boatwise Marine Training, they all offer these courses in person. And then another one, which I make sure to mention, is the Harbor Masters, because the Harbor Masters offer these quite frequently, and typically the Harbor Masters will offer it for free or a very minimal charge. So that's another nice option, a nice thing that the Harbor Masters are doing as well. And those are typically around that same time frame. They'll sometimes space them out over 3 nights or something, but it's usually in that 8 to 12 hour range to get that certification. So it's NASBA approved, and it has to be approved by the state.
What's NASBA approved?
National Association of Safe Boating Law. Okay. So that's the national organization that ultimately has a kind of a oversight of a lot of the different states and approves what they're doing. So it basically keeps the boating uniform. So yes, there's some different regulations by individual state, but having that national organization to be a part of it makes sense as well. So right now, since there is only that 1 and 2 by the same company options online, we also are hoping that the state will also allow other opportunities for online testing, especially if there are some, like a Boat US Foundation is one that does it for free. So they do it in different states currently where they've been approved. So that would be a nice option to see in Massachusetts as well. So
and what's wonderful about this is if you think of it along these lines, not as a test, but as a course. Yeah. It's a wonderful course. Absolutely. So many boaters are going to be, look, we all know that, a 16-year-old kid can take out a boat that goes 120 miles an hour and tear it up. Yeah. So it's good that they're getting the information they need. And you'll walk away from this test saying, there are some things in there I'm sure you did that absolutely. This was a good refresher for me.
For sure.
Some things I didn't know or realize. Yeah,
absolutely.
And education is a great thing when it comes to boating and boating safety, that's for sure.
Definitely. And we're seeing that already. There's been quite a bit of publicity about this and PR and just getting the word out there in the press. And you can kind of see some of the comments about just people talking about the bill, talking about the license, and talking about, just as you just mentioned, that it is a good refresher. There are certain things you're going to learn in that test that you didn't know, even if you've been boating for years and years. It's still good to take it again.
A lot of the old salts in Massachusetts will tell me, another license. I need a fishing license to freshwater and a fishing license to saltwater. But again, more than that, it's not just a license; it's a course.
Absolutely, and you got those.
Look at it that way, right? And I'm sure if you dot all the I's and cross all the T's, you'll pass. You'll get this, and you can take it as many times as you'd like, I'm sure.
That was another thing. It's a lifetime license. That's the other side. Once you pass, you're good for your lifetime. But as you mentioned, I think it's not a bad idea to take it every few years as a refresher, and especially if there are other options, and having that online access being a key thing, because you'll have more people that are taking it for sure. But,
and maybe there'll be a box to check when you do your insurance policy and say, look, I've taken I'm licensed and I've taken the course, and that helps along those lines. So let's talk a little bit about enforcement.
Sure.
What are the fees? What's the fine structure on this, and how will it be enforced, and by whom?
So I got to be honest with you, I don't know that for sure yet. I know the guidance is coming from the environmental police. Okay. So I don't know in terms of Coast Guard, Harbor Masters, environmental police exactly. I pretty much guarantee the environmental police will be the key ones. They drafted in the law the fees, which is the first fee is $50 for your first offense, and then the second fee is $100. So from there, I don't know what else they may add, and I don't know exactly how the
that offense would be just not having the license.
Correct.
So you get pulled over for some other reason, or you get boarded for an inspection, and you're unlicensed and you're at the helm.
Yes,
Probably
sir.
Not a good thing to have happen.
Exactly. And we're still trying to figure out one of the requirements is to have the certificate of the license with you. Now, does that mean physically with you? Does that mean a picture?
I'm sure.
So we're hoping that was one of our asks, just to have that virtual, because some people don't bring their licenses, don't bring their wallets when they're out boating. So that was one of our requests that we hope will be granted as well.
So we're one of the last states, or the last state?
We are one of the last states, within probably about 5 out of in the country.
Why do you think
and the
that
last
is?
one in New England. I don't have a good answer
We're
for you.
Massachusetts, the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We've been around for a while.
Agreed. Right? I don't have a good answer.
We've got a few voters in the state.
Yeah, we certainly do. There's about 130,000 registered and about 10,000 documented. So definitely do. I guess my focus is moving forward. It's in place now and trying to figure out ways to get the word out there and lead to lives saved on the waterways for sure.
So how does the Massachusetts Marine Trades Association become the spearhead of this initiative? How did that happen?
I mean, we worked in collaboration with a lot of different groups, and like I mentioned already, the state officials were fantastic to work with, just pushing and continuing to focus on that. But at the end of the day, we're focused on the recreational boating industry. We're focused on supporting our businesses. And the way I look at it is the more comfortable somebody is on a boat, the more education and safety training they have, the more likely they are to stay boating. And that's so important. You don't want somebody's first experience to be a bad one because they may get right out of boating. So that's kind of how I look at it for the association standpoint and supporting our businesses is we want people to be comfortable on the water and we want them to continue boating, continue to buy boats, continue to stay with this incredible hobby and activity for their lifetime. We're still trying to figure out the tweaks on the commercial license. That was one of our requests. Right now, there is an exemption for merchant mariner certificates and Coast Guard certificates like that. But if it's expired, you still have to take the test. Okay. So we'll see what happens in the state front there. But like somebody's got a 100-ton license and just happens to expire, do they need to take this license again? So it's just, I think that's where some of the people are going to be like, that may not add up. That doesn't make sense, especially if this is a lifetime license. So
there will be an online option.
There is an online. It's already available. So you can take it. I took mine a couple of years ago. So yes, you can do it today.
How'd you do?
Absolutely.
How'd you do? Was there any question that comes to mind where you did I did not know that.
No, there is not. There absolutely were questions I didn't know.
I thought red meant go.
No,
you did okay.
I did okay. I passed first try, so I was happy about that. And like I said, I'm not a huge boater.
I would say that maybe I'll try that on the show, on the podcast. Maybe I'll take the test on the podcast,
live,
but I don't know if I want to put there's always editing in our business too, so I can make it look good,
Yeah.
But that's great work. And, you wouldn't think the Massachusetts Marine Trades Association, outside of all the great work you do in promoting the trades, the Business of Boating Conference is always amazing. And, you're in the forefront of education. And here you are writing bills.
Well, I'm not writing it. That started way before my time. So it's just been a long time coming. And you mentioned education. I mean, this goes hand in hand with education as far as I'm concerned. So now the school programs, I mean, I would imagine like New Bedford Tech will use an example. Why not have their students do it right in the class? So it makes sense to me as far as I'm concerned. So,
sure.
Yeah, it goes hand in hand.
So Randall, just so our viewers aren't going to have to hit the rewind button right now and say, well, what did he say again? One more time with that. And of course, we'll have all the links to the information on this as well. But run through it one more time.
The requirement in Massachusetts now is that by April 1st, 2026, anybody born on or after January 1st, 1989 has to have their license in place. Again, April 1st, 2026. And then the second phase is April 1st, 2028 for anybody born before January 1st, 1989. So those are the two phase ends. Guidance is coming out right now that the state's working on, and enforcement will start September 1st, 2026. So definitely some time frame to take it, to learn about the bill, and to get the word out there.
Randall Lyons of the MMTA, as always, thanks for being here.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Great act. I'm glad this is happening.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
The Drift Podcast can be found at driftsociably.com or where all fine podcasts are heard.